Right now on WUSA9, it is Election Day in America. Months of campaigning all comes down to this. Voters across the country are casting their ballots right now.
The race for the White House is set to be one of the closest in history, but who will come out on top? Vice President Kamala Harris is closing out her campaign with a message of unity in Pennsylvania.
America is ready for a fresh start, ready for a new way forward where we see our fellow Americans not as an enemy, but as a neighbor.
And tonight, the campaign trail ends here in D.C. at Howard University, Harris's alma mater.
Meanwhile, former President Trump wrapping things up in another battleground, returning to Michigan and leaning into more hateful rhetoric in the final hours of the race.
We will defeat the corrupt system in Washington because I'm not running against Kamala. I'm running against an evil Democrat system. These are evil people.
Plus, could the path to control the U.S. Senate wind through Maryland? Will voters once again rally behind former Governor Larry Hogan? Or will Prince George's County Executive Angela Also Brooks get a promotion?
And on the other side of the Potomac in Virginia, another Senate seat on the line. Senator Tim Kaine hoping to fend off a challenge from Republican Hung Cao.
From the big national races to the local contests that impact you, we've got you covered all night.
Live coverage of the 2024 election starts right now on WUSA9 and streaming on WUSA9 Plus.
And thank you for choosing us on this historic day in America. It's Election Day. I'm Leslie Foster.
And I'm Lorenzo Hall. So we are live on WUSA9 and streaming on WUSA9 Plus. Let us point out it's going to be a long night and probably a long week, but we're going to have everything you need right here.
We're all in this together, watching and waiting the race to 270 Electoral College votes. There is anxiety and there is hope across the country and here in D.C. And part of that anxiety increased on Capitol Hill. Police arrested a man who had a flare gun and some fuel. We'll have a live report in just moments. And of course, the biggest race on everyone's mind is the race for the White House.
Yeah, WUSA9 is covering it from right here in D.C. and all the way in Florida as well. We have reporters at both Harris and Trump's campaign watch parties tonight. Let's start first with that Harris watch party right here in D.C. at Howard University. Our Marcella Robertson is there live tonight. Hi, Marcella.
Yeah, good morning to you both. You know, really a history-making event. The first time a presidential candidate has held an election night event, watch party at a college or university. Of course, we're talking about Howard University and HBCU right here in Washington, D.C., and the alma mater of Vice President Kamala Harris. She graduated here in 1986 and has now decided to make this the backdrop of her final stop as she wraps up her presidential campaign. We, of course, are a lot of media here, more media than anyone else right now. We know this is a very, very close race, but of course the Harris campaign hoping that the stage here behind me will turn into where she will deliver a victory speech. Now, of course, if elected, Harris will be making history again as the first female president of the United States. We know that tonight this is a private event, not open to the public. The university has actually been shut down here today and certainly impacting students as well. We know in this final stretch at rallies over the last few days, Harris has been pushing this message of unity. She spoke at a rally yesterday in Pennsylvania, telling her supporters and voters that it is time to turn the page, move on from politics led by fear and division. And we have heard this line over and over the last few days that if she is elected, she will come to the White House ready to get through her to-do list, while her opponent, former President Trump, will just be stewing over his enemies list. She has also pledged to seek common ground with those who disagree with her.
And we have an opportunity in this election to finally turn the page on a decade of politics that has been driven by fear and division. We are done with that. We're done. We're exhausted with it. America is ready for a fresh start, ready for a new way forward where we see our fellow American not as an enemy, but as a neighbor. And we are ready for a president who knows that the true measure of a leader is not based on who you beat down, but based on who you lift up.
And, driving them to the polls over many issues. The last couple of days she's been very
And I can tell you that the vice president campaigning up until the very last moments today. Just about 2 hours ago, she was at the DNC headquarters in Southeast in D.C., thanking the volunteers. They're still making phone calls. She is expected to take the stage here at some point tonight. We don't exactly know what the details are, but of course is expected to take the stage here. We were going to be here throughout the evening on the yard, again, a yard that she walked many times as a student here at her alma mater at Howard University, and we'll be sure to bring you the very latest and her speech live. Back to you guys.
Yeah, a lot of symbolism there with Frederick Douglass Hall behind you, the place where she would have taken a lot of her political science classes on campus. So everything chosen here has a great deal of symbolism there. Well, Marcella, thank you. And for even more on the impact of this massive event for Howard University, we go to our Lionel Donovan.
Yeah, he's also on the campus. And Lionel, what's the mood there? We spoke with you at 4 o'clock and we saw a lot of folks walking around.
That's right, and it looks like a lot of them have gathered here in front of Burr Gymnasium for a watch party that's happening in about 30 minutes. We've got dozens of students who have lined up in front of the gym all around the corner, actually, as they're waiting to hear about the election results today. And now we have two of those students that we wanted to talk to us, Jordan and Shanda. And so first thing I want to ask you, how does it feel to have Howard University host what could potentially be the next president?
I mean, simply put, it's a wonderful day to be a Bison. Howard students already have so much pride in their school, and I was even telling my parents, prepare to be sick with me if this ends up working out. It's such a surreal experience to just know that we're walking the same paths and the same halls that Vice President Kamala Harris has walked, and I'm very excited to see what she's going to do in the future, so I'm very stoked.
All right, and how do you feel?
For me, it's inspiring. I genuinely feel like I can conquer the whole world if I wanted to. As somebody who is an aspiring attorney, to see VP Harris, who is not only an alum of my HBCU, but also somebody that I share heritage with, it just fills my heart with so much pride and joy to be able to see her in this position and to be able to support her in voting in my first presidential election.
All right. Well, glad so much. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, and hopefully it's a good night tonight. So, as you can see, a lot of enthusiasm here at Howard University for the Vice President Harris, and now they're waiting to see if that enthusiasm will pay off. Back to you guys.
It's just adds to the long list of history-making moments on that campus for sure. There are a lot of campaign watch parties tonight in D.C. That's the place to be for sure.
That's for sure. I'm looking at one of the young people that Lionel spoke to, and her shirt said from the White House, or from Howard to the White House, and she wants to get her back there. So we'll see how this all kind of ends up again.
All right, Lionel, thank you. Now we got to talk about the Trump campaign. The former president is spending the night in Florida.
He's going to start the night waiting for results at Mar-a-Lago, but his official campaign watch party is just a few miles away at the Palm Beach County Convention Center. That's where Eric Glasser is covering this campaign tonight. And Eric, good evening to you.
Hi, guys, and good evening to you. Yep, we're looking forward to spending the night with you here in West Palm Beach. The former president, as you mentioned, is going to have his watch party at home at Mar-a-Lago. His supporters are going to be here at the convention center. Earlier today, former President Trump and his wife Melania came back to South Florida from 4 stops in Michigan. Their first stop that they made when they got back here was a polling place not far from Mar-a-Lago and not far from here at the convention center. And then the former president took questions for about 15 minutes. Now, I can tell you that here inside the convention center, security is very tight. Outside as well on the streets. They are expecting about 4,000 to 5,000 people here. Mr. Trump says that he and his family are going to be watching those results, as we said, at Mar-a-Lago, and then eventually make their way here, depending upon how things go, he said. The former president says he has not prepared any speeches and asked whether, win or lose, this would be his last campaign. He said he thinks so. He was also asked whether, unlike in 2020, he'd be willing to concede if it appears that he had lost. And he said he would, but with a qualifier.
I think they're crazy. If I lose an election, if it's a fair election, I'd be the first one to acknowledge it. And I think so far, I think it's been fair. I think there's been a lot of court cases. Both sides are lawyered up. Thousands of lawyers are involved, thousands, can you imagine? And part of that is because we have too complicated a process.
After voting today, Mr. Trump headed over to his campaign headquarters in West Palm Beach to thank his staff. He said he believed that this was the best campaign of the 3 that he has ever run, but that in order to make that stick, they would have to win. You may remember also that in 2020, Trump came out and in the early morning hours declared victory, even though he had not, in fact, had the votes. And that, of course, led to the contention that we've seen over the past 4 years. Asked about whether or not he would be claiming victory again, this time the former president seemed to concede that there would likely be a delay in many of the states where it's just a razor-thin margin at this point, and acknowledged it might be several hours or even days before we have results from some of those areas. I'm going to go ahead and quote him. He said, yeah, I'm hearing the same thing you're hearing. I'm hearing states where I'm up by a lot, but they won't have final numbers for a long time. We'll be here to see how it all unfolds with you throughout the evening. Live in West Palm Beach, Eric Lasser. Back to you guys.
Yeah, looks like they're testing things out, getting ready, and as the night progresses, I'm sure you will have a lot more people around you.
Enjoy the calm.
Yes, the calm before the storm.
All right, Eric, thank you. All right, in the meantime, we're following some breaking news out of D.C. tonight. Law enforcement is on alert, and we know they're ready to respond to any threats this election day.
Yeah, we're getting word that U.S. Capitol Police have made a concerning arrest. A man arrested at the Capitol Visitor Center. Police say they smelled something and saw something unusual. Our chief investigative reporter, Eric Flack, is live there. So, Flack, what did they see? What did they smell? And how did this all turn out?
Yeah, Les, U.S. Capitol Police were on high alert when we arrived on the scene earlier this afternoon. They were standing outside the U.S. Capitol Visitor Center. They were actually turning tourists away who were showing up for already signed up tours that they were expecting to have, only to find out the Visitor Center had been closed for the day after a scary incident outside the south entrance. Police say they found a man trying to get into the Visitor Center with a torch gun, 2 bottles, a torch, 2 bottles of gasoline, and a high-powered lighter.
As he approached the Capitol Visitor Center, he was walking fairly slowly, looking around. When he walked into the CVC, he's observed looking around, looking up, looking to the left, to the right. And it was actually then that one of the officers came up and said, "Sir, you need to put your stuff on the machine." And he hesitated for a moment. The officer told him again. That's when he got closer to the screening area and put his stuff on the conveyor belt.
Yeah, when U.S. Capitol Police officers saw that flare gun, a torch lighter, and those 2 bottles of accelerant or gasoline, he was, of course, immediately arrested. There was no major incident after that. They found his car just a couple of blocks from here. As far as a motive, what he was going to do if he, in fact, had gotten inside the U.S. Capitol Visitor Center, the police chief says that remains really unclear. He just said that the man inside that bag had a very long letter that he wanted to deliver to Congress. Now, the contents of that letter, what its intent was, still unclear. We are hoping to learn more from U.S. Capitol Police as their investigation and this night goes on. Guys, back to you.
Yeah, we'll be watching and waiting for what happens next. Eric, thank you.